To understand how 47 Ronin ended up crossing snow-covered rooftops in the middle of a January night, you have to go back 22 months. April 21, 1701, Edo Castle. Two envoys from the imperial court in Kyoto were being received by the shogunate, and the man responsible for coaching provincial daimyo through the correct etiquette was Kira Kazuke no Suke Yashinaka, a koke, master of ceremonies, a career bureaucrat with a reputation for demanding bribes from the lords he was supposed to instruct. Assigned to work under him was Asano Takumi no Kami Naganori, the young daimyo of Akko Domain in Harima Province, a 50,000 koku fief on the inland sea. What actually passed between the two men has been debated for 3 centuries. Some accounts say Kira insulted Asano publicly for refusing to pay the customary gifts. Others say Asano simply snapped under weeks of humiliation. What is certain is what happened in the Matsu no Oroka, the pine corridor of Edo Castle. Asano drew his short sword, a wakizashi, and slashed Kira across the forehead and shoulder. Drawing a blade inside the shogun's castle was a capital offense. There was no trial. Shogun Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi, notoriously rigid and personally offended, issued his ruling the same day. Asano was ordered to commit seppuku before sundown. His lands were confiscated. His castle at Akko was to be surrendered. Kira received no punishment at all, and by the shogunate's own logic, Kenka Ryosibai, the principle that both parties in a quarrel should be punished equally. That decision was a legal outrage. When the news reached Akko Castle days later, 308 samurai of the Asano clan suddenly had no lord, no fief, no income, and no legal standing. They were Ronin. But that was only the opening move. What their chief retainer did next defied every rule of warfare and every expectation of the man giving the orders. The man now responsible for the fate of the Asano clan was Oishi Kuranasu Yashio, Karo, chief retainer of Akko. He was 42 years old, considered by contemporaries to be competent but unremarkable. That reputation was about to become the most valuable weapon in his arsenal. Oishi's first decision was to surrender Akko Castle without resistance, diffusing any pretext for further punishment. His second decision, the one that shaped everything, was to send a formal petition to the shogunate asking that Asano's younger brother, Daigaku, be permitted to restore the clan. He waited. Publicly, he waited patiently. Privately, he was building an operation, because Kira knew what was coming. Every daimyo in Edo knew what was coming. Kira increased the guard at his Honjo mansion to somewhere between 100 and 150 retainers and hired bodyguards. He posted spies on the Ronin. He read their letters. He watched their movements. And month after month, what those spies reported back was that Oishi Kuranasu had collapsed. Oishi moved to Kyoto and began drinking publicly in the Jinpleasure district. He was seen falling down drunk in the street. He divorced his wife of 20 years and sent her away with their children, an act that would spare them if his true plan failed. He was reported consorting with prostitutes, gambling, disgracing himself so thoroughly that a Satsuma samurai passing him unconscious in the gutter allegedly spat on him and cursed his cowardice. If this is landing, save this video. You will want to come back to this one, because what Oishi was actually doing has become a case study in deception operations that Japanese military academies still reference. By the summer of 1702, Kira's intelligence chief reported that the Asano Ronin were broken, scattered, and no longer a credible threat. Guard levels at the Honjo mansion began to drop. In July 1702, the shogunate delivered its final answer on the clan restoration petition. The request was denied. Daigaku Asano was placed under house arrest. The Asano line was formally extinguished. That was the trigger. Oishi had been waiting for exactly that decision. Within weeks, the surviving loyalists were moving into Edo one by one, disguised as merchants, doctors, and construction workers. They rented buildings within blocks of Kira's mansion. One Ronin, Kanzaki Yagoro, married the daughter of a builder who had worked on the Kira estate and obtained detailed floor plans. Another, Oishi Chikara, the Karo's own 15-year-old son, was posted to observe the changing of the guard. By December 1702, Oishi had 46 other men committed to the operation, a full intelligence picture of the target, and a confirmed date. Kira Yashinaka would be hosting a tea ceremony on the 14th day of the 12th month. His guests would leave late. His guards would be relaxed, and it was going to snow. The night of the assault, the 47 Ronin gathered at a safe house near Ryogoku Bridge. They wore matching black and white firefighters' coats, a shrewd choice, because roving firemen were the one group who could move through Edo's streets at night without being challenged. They carried katana, wakizashi, spears, chain weapons, and critically, bows. Oishi had planned for a silent kill of the perimeter sentries. The force split into 2 elements. The front gate assault group, 23 men, was led personally by Oishi Kuranasu. The back gate group, 24 men, was led by his son Oishi Chikara. Attack time, roughly 0400 local, in a heavy snowfall that muffled sound and reduced visibility for the defenders. Before crossing into the compound, Oishi did two things that reveal how carefully the operation had been engineered. First, he sent runners to the neighboring mansions to inform the surrounding daimyo that this was a private vendetta and not a rebellion, preventing any panicked intervention. Second, he had drummers positioned to signal between the two assault groups once they were inside. They came over the walls with rope ladders and grappling hooks. The archers took down the rooftop sentries before an alarm could be raised. At the front gate, Oishi's men breached with a wooden sledge. At the back, Chikara's group forced entry into the servants' quarters. The fighting inside was room by room, corridor by corridor, in near total darkness. Kira's retainers, many roused from sleep, some unarmored, fought hard. 16 of them were killed in the assault, 22 more wounded, some crippled for life. The Ronin took only minor injuries. Not a single one of the 47 was killed. But when the mansion was cleared, Kira was not among the dead. He was not in his bedchamber. His futon was still warm. He had fled. For nearly 2 hours, the Ronin searched the compound. It was Yashida Chuziman who finally noticed a small charcoal shed in an inner courtyard and a hidden door. When they broke through, they found an old man in a white sleeping robe, cornered against the far wall with 2 of his personal guards. The guards were killed. The old man refused to identify himself. Oishi held a lantern to the man's forehead. The scar from Asano's blade, nearly 2 years old, was still clearly visible. They offered him the honor of seppuku. Kira Yashinaka refused or was unable to respond. Oishi used the same short sword with which Asano had committed seppuku in 1701 to take Kira's head. It was the 11th hour of the 12th month, but what happened after they had the head is what turned a private revenge into a national crisis. At dawn on January 30, 1703, 46 men, one, Terasaka Kichiman, had been sent ahead as a messenger, marched openly through the streets of Edo carrying Kira Yashinaka's severed head wrapped in cloth. They walked roughly 10 kilometers south to Sengakujai Temple in the Takanawa district, where Asano Naganori had been buried 22 months earlier. At the grave, they washed the head in the temple well, the well is still there today, and laid it before their lord's stone. Oishi wrote a formal report to Asano's spirit explaining that the vendetta was complete. Then he sent word to the shogunate. The 46 of us are at Sengakujai. We surrender. This is where the Tokugawa government faced a problem it could not solve. Under Bushido, the samurai ethical code the shogunate itself claimed to uphold, the 47 Ronin had done exactly what loyal retainers were morally required to do. They had avenged their lord. But under Tokugawa law, they had conducted an armed assault on a shogunate official inside the capital, in defiance of a specific edict forbidding private vendettas, katekyachi, without government authorization. The debate inside the shogunate lasted 6 weeks. The leading Confucian scholar of the era, Ajiu Sorai, argued that while the Ronin were morally right, they had to be executed to preserve the rule of law, but they should be granted seppuku, an honorable death, not the criminal's execution. Others argued they should be pardoned as exemplars of loyalty. Others still demanded they be crucified as rebels. On February 4, 1703, the 4th day of the 2nd month, Shogun Tsuneyoshi issued his ruling. The 46 Ronin were sentenced to seppuku. They were divided among 4 daimyo households and committed ritual suicide the same day. They were buried at Sengakujai in a semicircle around the grave of Asano Naganori. The 47th, Terasaka Kichiman, either was pardoned or lived out his life in obscurity and was buried with his comrades decades later. The graves are still visited today. Kira's family fared worse. His son and heir, Kira Yashichika, was stripped of his fief for having failed to protect his father, a punishment that effectively ended the Kira line. CTA 1213 Min. If you have made it this far, you are the kind of viewer this channel is built for, someone who wants the real operational detail, not the surface story. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. New battle every Wednesday. And drop this in the comments. Was Oishi Kuronasuke a hero of loyalty or a criminal who defied the law? There is no wrong answer. Japan itself has been arguing about it for 323 years. Outro 1315 Min. The Akko incident, as it is called in Japan, became the single most influential moral parable in Tokugawa and modern Japanese history. Within decades, it was dramatized as the play Kaneihin Chushingura and performed continuously ever since. It shaped the imperial army's doctrine of unquestioning loyalty in the late 19th century. It was invoked to justify officers' coups in the 1930s. It was cited in kamikaze pilot letters in 1945. And in modern special operations doctrine, the deep cover deception, the 22-month operational patience, the simultaneous multi-axis assault under weather cover, the immediate strategic messaging after the objective was secured, Oishi Kurenasuke's plan reads less like a feudal revenge story and more like a Cold War Special Forces case study written a century and a half early. One lesson stands above all the others. The 47 Ronin did not win because they were superior swordsmen. They won because their enemy stopped believing they were coming. Deception operations are always won or lost in the mind of the target, and Oishi Kurenasuke understood that in 1701, when the discipline of drinking himself unconscious in a Kyoto gutter was, in operational terms, the first blow of the raid. If this one hit, my video on the Czech paratroopers who assassinated Reinhard Heydrich in Prague in 1942, Operation Anthropoid, another 22-month deception, another impossible target, another final stand in a hidden room will blow your mind. It is next in the queue. See you Wednesday. On January 30, 1703, 47 masterless samurai executed one of the most meticulously planned deception operations in pre-modern military history. Their target, Kira Kazunosuke Yashinaka, the shogunate protocol official responsible for the forced suicide of their lord, Asano Takumi no Kami Naganori, 22 months earlier. Their leader, Chief Retainer Oishi Kurenasuke Yashio, spent nearly 2 years constructing a public performance of drunken collapse in the Kyoto pleasure districts, a deep cover operation designed to convince Kira's intelligence network that the threat had ended. It hadn't. This is the full operational account of the Akko incident. The insult in the Pine Corridor of Edo Castle, the shogunate's legally indefensible ruling, the 22-month deception, the two-axis night assault on the Honjo mansion in a January blizzard, the discovery of Kira in a charcoal shed, and the shogunate's agonizing 6-week debate that ended with 46 ritual suicides at Sengakujai Temple. Featuring real names, unit numbers, casualty figures, and the doctrinal legacy the raid left on Japanese military thought from the Imperial Army to the Kamikaze Corps. 00, 00 Hook 00, 30 the blood on the Pine Corridor 03, 00 the long deception 06, 00 the raid at Honjo 09, 00 the verdict that split an empire 12, 00 subscribe 13, 00 legacy and next battle.